Hello, buongiorno, ciao. Welcome to episode 34 of Wine with Wanda on Instagram Live. As always, thank you for tuning in. So yesterday, I was on the other side of the camera. Someone interviewed me and they asked me, when it's safe to travel again, where's the first place you want to travel? And I said, Italy and Spain. It's always hard for me to choose between the two, but Italy, I miss so much. I miss the beautiful landscapes. I miss the food. I miss the people. I miss being in the wineries. And of course, Tuscany. Maybe it's not overly original to say that I miss Tuscany, but there's a reason why people love Tuscany. Those rolling hillsides, the wonderful food, and the wonderful wines, like the wines we're going to taste today. Wines from Querciabella, which means beautiful oak. And I'm so excited that today that winemaker Manfred Ing will be joining us to guide us through two of their wonderful wines. So if you're not familiar with Querciabella, which I love to say that, it has a great ring to it. The winery was founded in 1974 with just a single hectare. It was a man with the vision. And from that single hectare, it's expanded to over 100, spanning the Tuscan countryside. And Chianti Classico and Maremma, which is the coastal region of Tuscany. In 1988, long before many others, they converted to organic viticulture. And in 2000, they introduced a 100% plant-based approach to biodynamics, which is very exciting. I'm looking forward to asking Manfred all about that. And they don't use any animal products in their vineyards or the cellars. So today we're going to taste two of their wines. We're going to start with, I love a good Chianti Classico, and this one is lovely. Querciabella 2017 Chianti Classico, 100% Sangiovese, and this retails for about $30. And then this is really one of their icon wines, a super Tuscan. This is Camartina, the 2015 vintage, which if you love Italian wines, you know 2015 was a great vintage throughout Italy. This is a blend of Sangiovese and I believe Merlot. So this retails for about $150. So I can't wait for us to taste this. It's Cabernet Sauvignon and Sangiovese. So there we go, Camartina. So I'm going to add in, here we go. Instagram does its thing. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Just waiting. Hi, Manfred.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting us on.
Yes. So, I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I have to say, I love your quote in your little Instagram bio where you say, passionate winemaker in Tuscany, rugby, an SUP fanatic, sleep-deprived dad, single malt lover, proudly South African, been told I dream too much. I love it. It's so poetic. It really tells who you are.
That's pretty much my story in a nutshell, I guess.
Well, I would love to learn how a South African rugby fanatic ends up making wine in Tuscany. So tell us a little bit about you before we get into the winery.
Well, I actually obviously grew up back in South Africa in KwaZulu-Natal, which is up on the East Coast, and there's not many vineyards around there.
Interesting.
So
okay.
Actually, you're in the countryside, you drive for an hour and you're in the savannah with lions and cheetahs and all the rest. You drive for 1 hour and you're on a tropical coastline, and you do an hour and a half and you're in mountains at 3,000 meters. So very unique microclimates, but no grapes.
No grapes.
And
Okay.
I ended up going down to Stellenbosch University to study winemaking because, I grew up in an Italian, with Italian culture all around me. My mother's Italian, and wine and food were always there, and kind of started my love. And my father has some friends who are historic South African winemakers, and went down there and started to study it. And once the bug bit, I just kept on going. So got my degree at Stellenbosch University, and then I kind of set off around the world. I was like a harvest junkie. I just wanted to learn and see and taste and smell, and I was like a sponge. And I set off around just trying to learn from some of the best winemakers I could. And I was doing Southern Hemisphere harvest in South Africa, and then I was off to New Zealand in Central
Wow.
Otago and Hawke's Bay. And then from there, I was up in California, Napa Valley for the season, and back to South Africa, off to New Zealand, up to Barolo, back to South Africa and New Zealand. So doing as much as I could, and just trying to see and learn. At which point, I actually ended up living full-time in New Zealand
Oh, okay.
for nearly 2 years in Central Otago, and then we decided that New Zealand was too far away to live from the rest of the world. It's just a lovely place, but I came back to work in Italy, up in northern Italy, in the Barolo region with Vieti.
Oh,
And
wow. Nice.
and myself and Luca kind of joined Querciabella together in 2010. So Sebastiano, when they approached me to join as a young winemaker, it was an opportunity of a lifetime. Unfortunately, the sun's just about down, so I can't show what it looks like outside. But it's everything that you explained. It's like a dream.
It really is. It really. Wow, what a fascinating journey you've had. And Querciabella, is really this visionary gentleman, Pepito, right?
Yeah, Pepito, and his son Sebastiano. Absolutely, we're very, very, very fortunate. Like you explained, we started with 1 hectare. We're surrounded where the winery is now, and now we have in the Chianti Classico alone more than 75 hectares, and in 3 different. So this is actually a map of the Chianti Classico.
Great.
And so we're situated here in Greve and Chianti, in Ruffoli on the hillsides. So, I mean, we're outside, we're at about 450 meters above sea level. And our vineyards go from 350 meters all the way to 600. And that's just on the hillside here in Greve. And obviously the Chianti Classico is made up of many different subzones and villages. And we actually have vineyards in 3 of the different subzones, in Greve, Rada, and Gaiole.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll talk more about that, kind of the differences what those contribute to the wines. So, plant-based biodynamics. So I would just love for you to help us unwrap that, organic, biodynamic, plant-based biodynamics. So can you maybe quickly take us through that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So it basically follows the evolution that Querciabella has taken here. So originally the vineyards were conventional, so to speak. And in 1988, when Sebastiano started to get involved with the winery, with his father still in here, there was the conversion to organic viticulture, which was the elimination of all of the chemicals, etc., which at the time didn't exist in Europe. There wasn't organic certification in Europe until I think 1995, 1996 maybe. So it was completely far out there. And the story goes that it was actually done without his father even knowing. And then when he came to his father and said to him, well, there's this way of doing viticulture and agriculture, his father's like, no, it's impossible. To be a disaster. And obviously, Sebastian said, well, we've been doing it, and it's for the last few years, and it's incredibly, look how well it's working. And that was the starting ground. So that was the elimination of the chemicals. And then from there, in 2000, again, Sebastiano, after attending a famous tasting up in Milano of only biodynamic wines, he was overwhelmed by the energy and the liveliness of these wines. They really spoke to him, and he said, well, we should be doing this. So we converted to traditional biodynamics. So biodynamics, the holistic approach to viticulture, or to agriculture, where there is also the link with the land and the cosmos, and it can get quite esoteric. Rudolf Steiner is the godfather of it, and there are also these different preparations, which are what everyone talks about. They will tell you about the preparation 500 or 501, 502, 503, 507, whatever. And these are the different, you take the cow horn with the manure, bury it under the ground, and when the moon is waning, etc., etc.
I apologize for the noise. I'm on a very busy street in Manhattan, so it never fails.
No worries. So from there, you spray it in homeopathic quantities, and the concept of it is the holistic approach to the microorganisms in the soil, to the birds and the bees. And from there, Sebastiano, again, like you said, a visionary, He's a vegetarian for 35 plus years, a vegan for the last 15 years or
Which I
more.
have to say, I don't think I've ever met anyone in Italy who was vegetarian or vegan. I mean, I'm sure I know they
No,
exist, but rare,
exactly.
especially back then when he started, I'm sure.
Exactly that. And we then converted, so he came along and said, well, we're going to eliminate all animal compounds
Wow.
completely from all. So this is around the time when I joined. So I think when you make changes like that in agriculture, it's more the fear that something's going to potentially go wrong or happen, but
Exactly.
instead we have flourished. The vineyards have never been better. The wines have never been better. And instead of having these biodynamic preparations, we've been focusing a lot on it's our vegan interpretation of the biodynamics, and we're
Okay.
using cover crops as being the predominant, the background. So the cover crops that we're using in our vineyards in the alternating rows. So the cover crops are the seeds that people sow in alternating rows, and you see the beautiful photos of the lovely yellow strips of the wild mustard,
Yeah.
etc. And it's not something that Querciabella didn't invent it, but it's the way that we're applying it is something quite incredible. And we have our agronomist, Dallas, who's been here since the very beginning, since 1998, knows every vineyard by the back of his hand. And each one of our vineyards has their own specific recipe for the cover crops. So
Ah.
these cover crops are a combination of, I mean, your different legumes, your beans and your peas, and the stuff that fixes the nitrogen, if you want to look at it from a technical point of view. You've got your brassicas, which is your spicy leaf stuff, your wild rockets, your rapeseed, your broccolis, and all the rest. And they serve their little role. We have the different types of grains and clovers and all the rest, and that's to
Amazing.
get a bit more structure into the soil. You can look at everything from a very fine point of view, but for us, it's about biodiversity. We want as many different types of plants. I mean, if you think where the most fertile soil on earth is, it's in a forest. And it's just dying, decomposing plant matter. There's no one spraying any fertilizer there.
Yeah.
There's no one having to feed nitrogen and phosphates and whatever.
You know, and
So
it's true.
that is,
You can always feel the difference when you visit a vineyard that seems just like a natural part of the landscape, as opposed to kind of plopped in like a golf course, like, so I love it when I see the biodiversity and the cover crops. It really it feels more natural, more organic, the way it should be.
There's an energy that you can't quantify.
Yeah.
It's impossible to explain. People have to. I can say it across here to the other side of the world, but until you walk in the vineyards and you feel it, you get a sense for the birds and the bees. And now we've had a few days of it's been very warm, so the bees are just out, and you walk outside and all you can hear is the bees going crazy. It's quite incredible.
So how do you translate? So, all this attention in the vineyard, which is yielding these beautiful, healthy, balanced grapes. So what is your approach in the winery to kind of maintain the integrity of that fruit that you've worked so hard to grow?
Yeah, well, I kind of have like the opinion that it's with maximum attention to detail, we're able to have a minimalistic approach, so to speak. So by being really precise and paying attention, looking after all the grapes, picking them, selection when the grapes arrive, through their fermentation, their maceration, and through aging. By paying attention to detail, letting lots of patience, lots of experience, we're able to just follow the evolution, and we want the expression of Sangiovese to speak. So yeah, it's not hands off because it's very, very intensive.
Of course.
I mean, we break down, we pick all of our vineyards that we have that will go into the Chianti Classico blend. There's about 65 different parcels, 65 different little sites, all micro vinification. So all the ferments are 3, 5, 7 ton ferments, so tiny little ferments, breaking down, keeping each vineyard separate, and then following its evolution. So very precise, but I think that we're able to really find the expression of each vineyard site and then points in the right direction. So that's something that we've been doing. We had a great investment in the wine in 2010 when we were able to find the first vintage of the Chianti Classico 100% Sangiovese was 2010. And I think it's from that onset we changed the way we're really focusing on each site, and that's changed even the way the aging that we do and how we do it. 15 years ago, it was 100% barrels, and now, as in 225 liters, we've reduced that quantity over the years. Again, with tasting, with experimentation, we're now, the 2017 is larger formats, 500 liters and 3,000 liters. So again, it's the expression of the Sangiovese. That's what we want you to taste. It's how it grows. It's Sangiovese in its purest form.
Love it. Well, I think that's the perfect segue to start tasting. So I have the Querciabella 2017 here, 100% Sangiovese. I can't wait. The nose. Really fresh, pretty, just fruit coming out of it, you know, just very lively. And it's biodynamic since 2000, correct? Yes.
Yes, yes.
So you mentioned, so the 65 different plots, do they all make the cut, or there's some that you kind of can count on for each harvest, and if some others that are maybe yes, maybe no?
We have our, we have some of our historic vineyard sites where we know the exceptional fruit comes from.
Yeah.
Generally, a portion of that will end up on our Reserva or in Camartina from the hillside of Ruffoli. But yeah, if there's a parcel of fruit that we figure is not good, it gets declassified or will get sold on. That hasn't happened since I've been here, so I mean, we're not really have to keep things back.
Absolutely.
But you touched on some notes there that it's something that we really are striving for. It's that liveliness, that how it jumps out the box.
It does,
and that is something that is quite important. There's the liveliness. There's an energy in our wines that's starting to show, and it's the way we do things in the vineyards and in the winery. But it's really the explosiveness that you touch on. That for me has got a lot to do with the greve component. So the vineyards that are around here, the vibrancy of the fruits really jumps out. The red vibrancy.
And what would Radda and Gaiole contribute? What would you say those styles are?
So the Radda components, I don't know, I smell and taste in colors my whole life.
Yeah, please. I would love to hear you describe as opposed to me. So.
My memories in life are even colors, and I can smell things like that. But it's the greve is red. Everything for me is just red. When you taste all the different barrel samples, and when we put together the most recent blend, the 2019 blend, the greve is just red. It's liveliness. It jumps out. Then you associate whatever red fruit is for you, the cherries. The Radda, as you start to go to Radda, it starts to get a bit darker, but not dark and intense, but more purple. And it's, again, there's the density of the fruit is a bit more intense as we go further south. So there's the tannin structure, I think, also of our wines. There is the silky, velvety tannins. A lot has got to do with the Radda site, I think. Okay. And then as you go down to Gaiole, we've got the intensity of the fruits. But also volume and freshness, and the fruit starts to get a little bit darker, almost not black but blue type, and they all come together into what we have here, which is the beautiful 2017.
You know, you see things in color. Often when I'm drinking wine, I'll get kind of cinematic images, and what popped in my head was Baryshnikov in his prime taking a leap, strong and graceful. So I kind of pictured that energy of just a perfect leap from Baryshnikov.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, ready to taste. Fresh, crisp. I feel like I picked the grape, bit into it. You know, that energy, that essence is there. You know, it's wow.
That's what we're trying to contain, to point in the right direction. Even if you see the color is incredibly light.
It is very light.
For me, it's not about the density of the color. It's about the quality. How does it jump out at you? This is Sangiovese. This is how it grows, and we're just pointing it in this right direction.
Yeah, and you know, it's juicy. That acidity is just carrying it through. Fruity, but not jammy. It's just like this really pure, beautiful fruit flavor that's light and graceful, but still has some oomph. You know, really, really a pleasure to drink. Do you have some favorite, I mean, I feel like this goes with everything, but is there some favorite pairing that you have?
I love our Chianti Classico with wild, and also Camartina, wild, the mushrooms from the countryside
Oh,
here. So
okay.
when it's mushroom season, you get all of the old gentlemen,
Hmm.
the farmers get out and they're picking the different types of wild mushrooms, and the umami characteristic goes beautifully with Sangiovese. I mean, all of our wines here at Querciabella are for food. I mean, you even see on our Chianti Classico, you see the label has 3 chefs.
Oh, yes.
So I mean, again, that's just how the wine
Beautiful.
the wine is made for food. In Italy, you don't have food without wine or wine without food.
That's
So
true. Yeah, and there is a lovely earthiness, an earthy thread. So I can see where that mushroom combination would be off the charts, you know. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I met a winemaker once who said, never trust a winemaker who isn't obsessed with food. So you passed the test.
I like that. I don't trust any winemakers who have clean hands, but that's a very good, that's a great.
I think both, you know, and I just think, you know, I always say, especially in a city like New York, for most of us, Chianti Classico were probably first introductions to Italian wines because we have such a strong Italian American culture here and restaurant community. And I'm always trying to teach people the quality, whatever Chianti or Chianti Classico you were drinking in the 70s. I mean, really the level now of winemaking. So you have something here, biodynamic, you know, these beautiful vineyards, all of this detail for $30. It's really, there's a lot happening here. It's really quite a value.
Absolutely.
It's a
No,
trip to
yeah,
Tuscany in a
that's
glass.
something that
Yes.
we try to spread around the world is exactly that. That it's firstly, it's not just Chianti, because there's a very
Exactly.
big difference in that, and also the way we make it, the attention in the vineyards, and the fact that we're leaving our vineyards in a better place than we found them
Mm-hmm.
for generations to come, and producing a wine like this. That is our greatest goal. So it's
Now, this is really a joy to drink. You know, I think I tasted it for the first time. I was in Florence for the Anteprima, the Chianti
oh,
Classico in
okay.
2019. And I tasted these wines and fell in love with them. So, super Tuscan. Everyone knows the term super Tuscan. And you all were kind of at the beginning of that as well. So we had the Camartina 2015. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Camartina history, and then we'll get into this specific vintage.
Sure. So the first vintage of Camartina is 1981. So the Super Tuscan revolution movement, whatever you want to call it, was kind of in the beginning. I mean, depending on who you ask in the valley, we were considered the 5th or 6th producer to release wine that broke out the boundaries of the governing body in the region and was something unique. At the time, it was predominantly Sangiovese with a little bit of Cabernet.
Mm-hmm.
It was a vino da tavola, and if you ask anyone back in 1981, a liter of milk cost more than a liter of vino da tavola. So
Wow.
when these Super Tuscan came along, it was something completely new, and it was the goal of the winery of Querciabella to be able to produce a wine of exceptional level, like the original Super Tuscans, the big name, the explosion that they had around the world when
Mm-hmm.
people started to take Tuscany serious. Like you touched on before, it was just Sangiovese and Chianti in the straw bottle
Yep.
on the table to put your candle in when you're finished.
Exactly.
Back in the day, a lot has changed, and the quality of the Chianti Classico is up there with some of the best regions in the world. But the Super Tuscan was something very unique, and from there, our Camartina has changed. It's since 1999 was the last year that it was predominantly Sangiovese
Oh,
with Cabernet, and then again there was a transition to make it up until around 2003 to be predominantly Cabernet based with Sangiovese, and it's the blend. The 2015 is 70% Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% Sangiovese, and that's kind of the marriage for us that works perfect.
wonderful. Why did you decide to make the switch? What prompted? What were you looking for and by making Cabernet the more dominant grape?
I think it was to have, at the time, a bit of a separation between our Chianti Classico and Chianti Classico Reserva at the time, which was Sangiovese based with the drop of Cabernet. But I think Sebastiano really wanted the Camartina to stand on its own, to separate, to become our flagship wine. And Cabernet grows exceptionally well here in Tuscany, and that's something that's quite unique about Camartina. Is a lot of the other super Tuscan wines from the Tuscan coastline are big and bold and muscular and intense, whereas we've got Cabernet. We've got Cabernet that's growing at 450 meters above sea level here, so it's more about it's the Cabernet, the elegance that runs through all our wines. There's this DNA in the wine where there's elegance, and the Cabernet that grows here is not the same as the Cabernet that grows on the coast. So
of course,
we don't try to make it like that at all. It's the expression of Cabernet from the hillside roughly that works beautifully, and then by adding a little bit of the Sangiovese, it's the blend is complete.
Wonderful. And 2015 was one of those great years, right?
Yeah, 2015 was one of those. Like I say to everyone, there's no such thing as an easy vintage, but it was generally a little bit easy. We were able to be a lot more patient with our picking. We were able to really pay fine details and get in the vineyards and pick everything. It was perfect.
Love. Again, beautiful color, but not overly concentrated. It's not inky, you know, there's still some light coming through, you know, but the color's really pretty.
Yeah, Just remember, Camartina are also wines for aging. I mean, we're still drinking Camartina 1999, 1995. So the liveliness that you're picking up there on the nose is quite important, I think, especially in this. Even for me, this Camartina is a baby. Like we're now selling the newer vintage here, the 2016. But for me, the 15 is still is a baby. It's like a ball that's slowly starting to unwind.
Do you also bottle this in Magnum?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We do Magnum. We do 3 liter, 6 liter. We have lots of large formats for all of our wines.
Again, you know, just it's impressive. I mean, the freshness is what comes out at me. There's not alcohol jumping out. It's not oak. It's just this beautiful, slightly floral, some red fruit, some dark fruit, but just fresh. Yeah.
That's kind of what we're going for. Even the oak rate, like the way we age the wine in the winery, for a super Tuscan style of wine is really low. I mean, we're sitting around 25% new oak. So for the style of the wine, relatively low, because we want that fruit expression. Everything that you're touching on, we want people to get to understand, to taste.
Nice. Yeah. Like you said, you know, young, but first of all, I think in another half hour after I'm done with you and I'm still sipping, I'm just going to see this bloom because it's all there. Right.
It definitely benefits with a bit of time, or even the following day, the 2015 comes alive.
Yeah, and you're right. It's interesting. I always love a wine, and I was discussing this with someone yesterday. Complexity, I think some people mistake with being overwhelming, big, knock you off your socks, jammy, concentrated. The real challenge with making a complex wine is keeping that freshness and having the nuance and those layers of flavor kind of subtly work their way through. And I think this does that.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to achieve. There's the vibrancy, the energy, the tension also. There's an intensity about it, but it's not overpowering.
Yeah.
And it's a baby. This for me is still,
it's
a pity we don't have too much of it left for me to enjoy it, because it's been incredibly well received all around the world, and just it's gone poof. But we're very happy.
One of my fellow wine writers sent in a question, and I think this is the first time I'm actually going to take one, but she wants to know, do you see a difference in the size of your grapes, the bunches, the thickness of the skins, because of your practices compared to what you might see at wineries that aren't using those techniques in the vineyard?
I would assume so. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
like I've gone around to compare the bunches,
exactly.
but I would definitely say. I mean, our vines are grown here on there's no irrigation in the Chianti Classicals, and we've got
Hmm.
incredibly rocky, rugged soils. It's tough for the vines to grow, so they really need to sink their roots deep down into the soil to get all the nutrients to grow, to survive, so to speak. So our bunches are incredibly small. Our yields that we get from our vineyards
Hmm.
are ridiculously low. So the yield is the quantity of the grapes per surface area
Hmm.
is low. So yes, the bunches are smaller. Again, it depends on the season. Certain vintages, the warmer vintages, we have the smaller berries, much more concentrated. That's got to do with the rainfall, which we rely on Mother Nature to provide us with all the water. But again, that all ties into the cover crops and the way we work the soils and we manage the canopy. All comes into that. So it's a combination of things. But yeah, I would definitely say that the bunches are going to be a lot smaller and a lot more concentrated.
Wonderful. So when it opens up again, do you all welcome visitors at the estate? Do you have a tasting room and all of
Absolutely.
those good things in place?
Yep, yeah, we have. I'm sitting in the tasting room now, so we have a tasting room. We're open every day of the week, and we welcome people here. Even now in Italy, we're depending on if we're in Zona Rossa, red zone, or orange
Ah,
zone, or
okay.
yellow zone. I'm completely confused by it all. We do still offer. I mean, we can do space tastings. We can taste outside. We are still offering tastings. It comes with its challenges. And at the current moment, we haven't done any tour. We don't do any tours in the winery, but otherwise, normally we would do tours in the winery. You can come here. It's a quite a bumpy, windy road up to get to us, but you get here. We welcome guests, and we can taste, show around the winery, and yeah, share our story.
Wonderful. Well, I imagine once, the 2019 vintage goes into bottles, that is going to be such an emotional vintage for all of us because of the year that 2019 was and continues to be in some ways. But I've heard from other producers, it was actually a pretty good year for the grapes, 2019.
Very, 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 very good. We've just made the Chianti Classical blend for the 19. It's exceptional. The 19, the 20, they're yeah, very, very, very good. So it's yeah, I don't know. That's something that's with this whole chaos that's happened in the world is the vineyards, they don't know that there's a virus happening, so they go
Thank
ahead.
goodness.
So we've had to move and shake and figure out a way to do it and go forward. You've got to go forward. So the vines are, well, the bud burst is going to happen in probably 4 weeks time, and then we're off again. So you just got to learn to roll with the punches, I guess.
Yeah, we need our wine to keep us going. So thank goodness for that.
Don't you worry, Querciabella will continue to
Thank you.
provide beautiful wines for you.
So I want to show the wines again because all of you really need to try these. So this is the Chianti Classico 2017 in the US, about $30. And then the iconic Camartina 2015, and this is about $150. But this is a beauty. I mean, this is a special wine and will age. So this has been such a treat. I have some boring meetings coming up later, but I'm going to have a nice little Querciabella glow over Zoom. So thank you.
So thank you very much.
And I hope we get to meet in person one day. But thank you so
Thank you
much.
I look forward to welcoming you to Querciabella. So as soon as this all ends, you're all welcome.
Thank you. Well, stay safe. Thank you all for watching. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.